In the bustling town of Akoba, there lived a woman named Amara. She was a seamstress, known for her skilled hands and gentle heart. Every morning, she woke before dawn to sew clothes for customers, her needle moving quickly under the dim lamplight. Amara had 2 children, a boy named Chidi and a girl named Ngozi. They were good children who studied hard in school and helped their mother at home. Amara's husband, Obi, worked as a driver in the city. He would leave early each morning, his black bag slung over his shoulder, promising to return before sunset. "Don't worry, my wife," he would say with a confident smile. "Money is tight, but we will manage." And Amara believed him, because that is what wives do when they love their husbands. But recently, something had begun to feel wrong. The money Amara gave Obi for household expenses seemed to disappear like water poured into sand. She would check the small metal box where they kept their savings, and each time there was less than before. Bills that should have been paid were still waiting. Food that should have lasted a week was gone in 3 days. Yet Obi's confidence never wavered. One evening, as Amara sat counting the money from her sewing work, she noticed something strange. The household account book showed that Obi had withdrawn small amounts of cash several times that week. 10,000 here, 15,000 there, always when she was busy with customers or taking the children to school. She waited for him to return home that night, her heart heavy with questions. When Obi walked through the door, he was whistling a cheerful tune, his face bright with a smile that seemed too wide, too forced. "Obi," Amara said softly, showing him the account book, "where has this money gone? We needed it for Chidi's school fees next week." Obi laughed, waving his hand as if brushing away a fly. "My dear wife, you worry too much. I had to fix some problems with the car. You know how these vehicles are, always breaking down when you least expect it." Amara wanted to believe him, but something in his eyes told a different story. Still, she said nothing more. What could she say? He was her husband, after all. The next morning, Obi left the house earlier than usual, claiming he had personal business to attend to. What Amara did not know, what she could not see, was where Obi truly went on those early morning errands. He walked through the busy streets of Akobo with quick steps, his hands in his pockets, until he reached a small building painted in bright yellow and green. The sign above the door read "Sportybet" in bold red letters. Inside, the betting shop was already alive with energy. Men crowded around small screens mounted on the walls, watching football matches from countries Amara had never heard of. The air smelled of cigarette smoke and cheap cologne. Laughter echoed from every corner. "Obi! My brother!" called out a man named Emeka, waving him over. "Come and see this slip I've prepared. This one is sure win, I'm telling you." Obi grinned and walked to the counter, pulling out the money he had withdrawn that morning. His hands trembled slightly with excitement as he filled out his betting slip, carefully selecting teams and outcomes. "Over 2.5 goals must play," Emeka declared confidently. "Trust me, this match is guaranteed." Obi placed his bet, and the woman behind the counter handed him a small printed receipt. He folded it carefully and put it in his pocket like a precious treasure. Then he waited, watching the screen with the other men, their eyes glued to the moving ball. When the final whistle blew, Obi had won a small amount. His first taste of victory felt like honey on his tongue. The betting shop became Obi's second home. Each day he would return with new confidence, exchanging greetings with the other regulars. They spoke a language that Amara would not understand, a language of odds and predictions, of sure bankers and small odds. "My guy, Goal must enter this match," said a man named Tund, pointing at the screen with excitement. "Both teams must score, I'm telling you. If not, let them come and beat me." Everyone laughed, the kind of laughter that comes from shared hope and shared delusion. Obi laughed too, feeling like he belonged to something bigger than himself, something exciting and dangerous. "Me, I've studied the form," Obi announced proudly, showing his betting slip to the group. "Manchester United will win, and there will be more than 3 goals. Mark my words." The other men nodded with approval, treating his prediction like wisdom from the ancestors. And when some of his bets won, Obi felt like a king. The small amounts of cash he collected seemed to prove that he was smart, that he had figured out the system. But for every win, there were 2 losses. And slowly, quietly, the losses began to grow larger than the victories. Yet Obi told himself it was only temporary. One big win would fix everything. After winning a small bet one afternoon, Obi felt a rush of power surge through his body. The cash in his hand felt like proof of his intelligence, his special gift. He looked around the betting shop and made a decision. "I'm going to celebrate properly tonight," he announced to Emeka and Tund. "A man who wins must enjoy his victory." "Where will you go?" Emeka asked with a knowing smile. Obi lowered his voice. "There's a place near the market, with music and beautiful women. A place where a man can feel like a man." That evening, instead of going home to Amara and the children, Obi headed to a dimly lit building on the edge of town. Neon lights flickered above the entrance, and loud music poured out into the street. This was the strip club, a place where men came to forget their problems and pretend they were rich. Before entering, Obi called a man known as the money changer, a short fellow who exchanged old, crumpled notes for crisp, fresh ones. "I need mint notes," Obi said, handing over his winnings. "The freshest ones you have." Inside the club, Obi ordered expensive drinks with names he barely knew how to pronounce. When the dancers came to his table, he sprayed the mint notes into the air with exaggerated gestures, pretending he had money to waste. At home, Amara was counting coins to buy rice for dinner. The rent was due, and Amara did not have enough money to cover it. She sat at the kitchen table, staring at the small pile of cash she had earned from her sewing work, her heart sinking with each count. Even if she combined her savings with what Obi had promised to contribute, they were still short. "Mama, is everything okay?" little Ngozi asked, noticing the worry on her mother's face. Amara forced a smile. "Everything is fine, my dear. Go and finish your homework." But everything was not fine. When Obi came home that night, Amara showed him the problem. "We need to pay the landlord by tomorrow, or he will increase the rent as punishment." Obi scratched his head, his eyes darting away from hers. "Don't worry too much. I'll handle it. Money is just a small problem." "But Obi, where will you get the money?" "I said I will handle it." His voice was sharp, defensive. Then, seeing the hurt in her eyes, he softened. "Trust me, my wife. Have I ever let you down before?" Amara wanted to say yes, to list all the times promises had turned to dust. But she kept quiet. That night, she used her own savings, money she had been keeping aside for emergencies, to pay the rent. Obi never mentioned it again. The next morning, he left early, claiming he had one last big bet that would solve all their problems. At the betting shop, Obi's confidence had grown into something dangerous. He no longer placed small, careful bets. Now he gambled larger amounts, convinced that his luck was about to change, that the universe owed him a big win. "See this slip?" he announced loudly, holding it up for everyone to see. 5 matches, all carefully selected. "If this one plays, I'm cashing out 200,000. The other men gathered around, examining his selections with serious faces. Some nodded in approval. Others shook their heads, warning him about the risk. "My brother, 5 matches is too much," Emeka cautioned. "Even if 4 play, if one fails, everything is lost." But Obi waved away the concern. "You people and your fear. Sometimes you have to take risks to win big. Me, I'm not afraid." He placed the bet, his heart pounding with anticipation. For the next few hours, He sat glued to the screen, watching match after match. 1-1, 2-1, 3-1, 4-1. Only one match remained. The tension in the betting shop was thick enough to cut with a knife. Men who had placed similar bets gathered around, their eyes wide, their breaths held. And then, in the final minutes, the last match failed. Obi's slip was dead. His hands trembled as he crumpled the receipt and threw it on the floor. The loss felt like a punch to Obi's chest, knocking the air from his lungs. He sat in the betting shop, staring at the screen in disbelief. All that money gone in an instant. Money that could have fed his family for a month. "My guy, sorry Tun said, patting him on the shoulder. "That's how this thing is. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose." But Obi didn't want sympathy. He wanted to erase the pain, to forget the loss, to feel powerful again. And he knew exactly where to go. He left the betting shop and headed straight to the strip club. Before entering, he called the money changer, his voice urgent. "I need fresh notes. Quickly." Inside the club, the music was loud, the lights were low, and the air was thick with perfume and cigarette smoke. Obi ordered exotic drinks, expensive ones with strange names, and when the dancers came to his table, he sprayed mint notes into the air with wild abandon. The women smiled and danced closer, and for a moment, Obi felt like he was someone important, someone who mattered. He forgot about the loss, about the bills waiting at home, about Amara's worried face. But the next morning, when he woke up with a headache and empty pockets, reality came crashing back. Obi began to develop a strange ritual, a pattern that felt almost like a religion. Every time he lost a bet, he would tell himself the same story. "This is just temporary. One big win will fix everything. I just need to be patient and keep trying." He convinced himself that gambling was not an addiction but a strategy, a way to solve his financial problems. "Other men work like slaves for small salaries," he reasoned. "Me, I'm smarter. I'll win big and never have to worry about money again." Each loss became fuel for the next bet. Each visit to the strip club became a reward he felt he deserved for his hard work at the betting shop. The cycle deepened, and Obi fell further into the trap without even realizing it. His friend Emeka, who had introduced him to betting, started to notice the change. "Obi, my brother, I think you need to slow down. This thing is becoming too much." But Obi laughed, waving away the concern. "You worry too much. I know what I'm doing. In fact, I have a new system now. This time, I'll only bet on matches I'm absolutely sure about." Emeka shook his head but said nothing more. He had seen this story before, and he knew how it ended. Men like Obi never stopped until they had lost everything. Amara's suspicion grew stronger with each passing day. Obi's behavior had become increasingly erratic, unpredictable. He would leave the house at odd hours, return late at night smelling of alcohol and perfume, and offer vague explanations that made no sense. One evening, she decided to ask him directly. "Obi, what is happening? You are not the man I married. Where do you go every day?" His face hardened and his voice turned cold. "What kind of question is that? Are you accusing me of something?" "I'm not accusing you. I'm worried. The children need school supplies, and we haven't paid for Ngozi's uniform. You said money is tight, but I don't understand where it all goes." "I told you, I'm handling it." Obi snapped, his frustration boiling over. "Why do you always question me? Can't a man have some peace in his own home?" Amara stepped back, hurt by his words. She had never seen this side of him before, this defensiveness, this anger. Something was very wrong, but she didn't know what. The next day, the school sent a note home with Chitty, warning that if the fees were not paid by the end of the week, he would not be allowed to write his exams. When Amara showed Obi the note, he barely glanced at it. "I forgot," he muttered. "I'll take care of it tomorrow." But tomorrow came and went, and the fees remained unpaid. Desperation pushed Obi to make a dangerous decision. He had been losing consistently for weeks, and his confidence was shaken. But instead of stopping, he decided to place one massive bet, an all-in gamble that would either save him or destroy him completely. He withdrew the last of the money from the family savings, money that was supposed to cover groceries and utilities for the month. His hands shook as he filled out the betting slip, selecting 8 different matches, each one carefully chosen based on what he believed was solid research. "This is it," he whispered to himself. "This is my redemption." At the betting shop, the other men watched him place the bet with wide eyes. The amount was substantial, more than most of them earned in a month. "My brother, are you sure about this?" Tund asked, concern evident in his voice. Obi's jaw was set, his eyes fierce. "I'm tired of small wins and big losses. Today, I either win big or I learn my lesson." The matches began, and the betting shop fell into a tense silence. Everyone's eyes were on the screens. One by one, the results came in. First match, 1. Second match, 1. Third, fourth, fifth, all 1. Obi's heart raced. Hope surged through him like electricity. Only 3 more matches remained. The finish line was in sight. The 6th match went into stoppage time, tied at 1 goal each. Obi needed one of the teams to score for his bet to continue. The betting shop was silent except for the commentary from the television. Every man held his breath. And then, in the dying seconds of the game, the opposing team scored. Obi's selection had lost. The entire slip was dead. Obi sat frozen, unable to move, unable to breathe. The number on his betting slip, the number that represented his last hope, was now worthless. All that money gone. His family's future gambled away. Around him, the other men muttered condolences, but their words sounded hollow, distant. Obi's mind was racing, calculating the depth of his failure. Everything. Panic set in, cold and suffocating. What would he tell Amara? How would he face his children? The walls of the betting shop seemed to close in around him. But instead of going home to confess, instead of facing his mistakes, Obi did what he always did when reality became too painful. He stood up, walked out of the betting shop, and headed straight to the strip club. If he couldn't win money, at least he could pretend to have it, even if just for one more night. At the strip club, Obi tried to drown his sorrows in expensive drinks and loud music. He called the money changer and exchanged the little cash he had left for mint notes, determined to maintain the illusion of wealth. When the dancers came to his table, he sprayed the fresh bills into the air with exaggerated gestures, his face twisted into a forced smile. The women laughed and danced, and other men in the club watched him with a mixture of admiration and mockery. "Big man is here again," one of them called out, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Another man, who recognized Obi from previous visits, leaned over and whispered loudly, "I wonder where he gets all this money from. Maybe he's a politician." The group laughed, and Obi felt his face burn with shame. But he couldn't stop. He ordered more drinks, sprayed more money, desperate to maintain the facade, desperate to feel like someone important, someone successful. By the time he left the club hours later, his pockets were completely empty. He had nothing left, not even bus fare to get home. He walked through the dark streets of Akoba, his feet heavy, his heart heavier. As he stumbled along, one thought kept repeating in his mind. "Next time, I'll win. I just need one more chance. One more bet, and everything will be okay." With no money left and bills piling up at home, Obi did something he had sworn he would never do. He began borrowing money from friends, spinning elaborate stories to justify his request. "My brother, I need a small loan," he told Emeka one afternoon. "My wife's mother is sick, and we need money for hospital bills. I'll pay you back next week when my salary comes." Emeka, who knew the truth but felt sorry for his friend, reluctantly handed over some cash. "Obi, please use this money wisely. And try to stay away from the betting shop for a while." But Obi didn't use the money for hospital bills. He went straight to Sportybet, convinced that this time would be different, that this borrowed money was actually his ticket to freedom. He borrowed from Tun too, using a different excuse. and from another friend named Chinidu, claiming he needed to fix his car. Each time, he promised to repay quickly. Each time, he gambled it all away. The lies multiplied, and the debt grew like a shadow, following him everywhere he went. At night, his phone rang constantly with calls from people asking for their money back. Obi stopped answering, letting the calls go to voicemail, burying his head in the sand. At home, Amara noticed the strange phone calls, the way Obi's face would change when his phone buzzed, the way he would leave the room to answer in hushed, urgent whispers. One afternoon at the betting shop, Obi ran into an old friend named Okoro, someone he hadn't seen in years. Okoro looked different now, thinner, older, with tired eyes that held a deep sadness. They sat together, and Okoro began to tell his story. "My brother, betting destroyed my life. I lost my job, my wife left me, and my children don't speak to me anymore. I thought I could control it, but it controlled me instead." Obi listened, feeling uncomfortable, as if Okoro was holding up a mirror that reflected his own future. For a brief moment, clarity cut through the fog of his addiction. He saw himself clearly, saw the path he was walking, saw where it led. "You should stop now," Okoro warned, his voice heavy with regret. "Before it's too late. Before you lose everything like I did." Obi nodded slowly, genuinely moved by his friend's story. "You're right," he said. "I think I need to take a break." But as soon as Okoro left, as soon as the moment of clarity passed, Obi's addiction whispered in his ear, "Just one more bet. You're smarter than Okoro. You know when to stop. Just one more, and then you'll quit for real." He pulled out the money he had borrowed that morning and walked to the betting counter. The warning was forgotten. The moment of clarity was buried. The cycle continued. Amara stood at the market stall, carefully selecting tomatoes and onions for the evening meal. When she reached into her purse to pay, she pulled out her bank card and handed it to the vendor. The machine beeped. Once, twice, 3 times. "Madam, this card is not working," the vendor said, handing it back with a look of impatience. Amara felt her face grow hot with embarrassment. Other customers waiting in line began to murmur and stare. She tried the card again, but the result was the same, declined. Sorry, she muttered, quickly gathering her items and stepping aside, her heart pounding with humiliation. At home, she immediately logged into her mobile banking app, and what she saw made her blood run cold. The account was nearly empty. Large withdrawals had been made over the past few weeks, transactions she didn't recognize, places she had never been. Her hands trembled as she scrolled through the statement. Sporty bet, sporty bet, sporty bet. The name appeared again and again, each transaction draining their account bit by bit. Amara sat down slowly, her mind struggling to process what she was seeing. Sporty bet. She had heard neighbors talk about it, whisper about men who lost everything gambling. But Obi? Her husband? She checked further and found more transactions. Charges from places with names she didn't recognize. Bars. Clubs. Large amounts of cash withdrawn late at night. Her world tilted. Everything she thought she knew was crumbling. Amara's hands shook as she continued scrolling through the bank statements. Among the sporty bet charges, another name kept appearing. Lux Lounge and Golden Paradise Club. The amounts were staggering, sometimes 20,000, sometimes 30,000, always late at night. She didn't know what these places were, but her heart told her they were nothing good. She searched the names on her phone and discovered they were strip clubs, places where men went to drink and watch women dance. The betrayal cut deeper than she could have imagined. It wasn't just the money. It wasn't just the lies. It was the realization that while she was stretching every last coin to feed their children, to keep their home together, Obi was out there living a completely different life. She remembered the nights she had gone to bed hungry so that Chitty and Gozi could have full plates. She remembered the times she had patched their school uniforms because there was no money to buy new ones. She remembered the shame she felt at the market when her card was declined. And all the while, Obi had been spraying money in strip clubs, pretending to be wealthy, buying drinks for strangers who didn't care about him. Amara felt something break inside her, something that might never be repaired. But she needed to see it with her own eyes. She needed proof before she could confront him. She made a decision. She would follow him. The next day, when Obi left the house claiming he had errands to run, Amara followed him from a distance. She wore a head wrap pulled low over her face and stayed far enough behind that he wouldn't notice her. Her heart pounded with every step. Part of her hoped she was wrong, that there was some logical explanation, that the bank statements were mistakes. But deep down, she knew the truth. Obi walked through the busy streets of Akobo with quick, familiar steps, the steps of a man who had walked this path many times before. He turned down a side street and Amara followed, staying in the shadows. And then she saw it, the bright yellow and green building with the red "Sportybet" sign. Obi walked through the door without hesitation, greeting the men inside like old friends. Amara stopped across the street, watching through the window. She could see Obi laughing, talking, filling out papers at the counter. She could see other men gathered around screens, their faces tense with concentration. This was where their money had gone. This was the secret Obi had been hiding. Not another woman, not a business investment, but gambling. Pure, reckless gambling. Amara felt tears sting her eyes, but she blinked them away. She wasn't done yet. She needed to see everything. She waited outside, hidden in the shadow of a nearby shop, watching and waiting. Hours passed, and Amara remained hidden, watching the betting shop. She saw men enter with hope in their eyes and leave with disappointment etched on their faces. She saw Obi move from screen to screen, his body tense, his attention completely absorbed. At one point, she heard loud cheering from inside the shop. Obi was standing, his fist raised in victory, a small slip of paper clutched in his hand. He had won something, though Amara couldn't tell how much. "You see," Obi shouted to the other men, his voice carrying through the open door. "I told you this slip was a sure win. This is my redemption." The other men congratulated him, slapping his back, laughing together. For a moment, Obi looked genuinely happy, like a child who had just received a gift. But Amara didn't feel relieved. She felt sick, because she knew this wasn't redemption. This was just another chapter in the same destructive story. He would take that small win and gamble it away on the next bet, chasing a bigger victory that would never come. She watched as Obi collected his winnings from the cashier, counted the bills with trembling hands, and then, instead of coming home, instead of paying the bills that were waiting, he left the betting shop and headed in a different direction. Amara followed, her stomach churning with dread. She knew where he was going even before they arrived. The strip club was located in a part of town Amara rarely visited, where the streets were darker and the buildings more rundown. Neon lights flickered above the entrance, and loud music poured out into the night air. Amara watched from across the street as Obi stopped before entering and made a phone call. Within minutes, a short man appeared, someone the locals called the money changer. She watched them exchange crumpled bills for fresh, crisp ones. Then Obi entered the club, and Amara's heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. She stood there in the darkness, unable to move, unable to look away. Through the open door, she could see flashing lights, hear laughter and music, see shadows of people moving inside. This was where their children's school fees had gone. This was where the money for food and rent had disappeared. While she worked her fingers raw sewing clothes, while she went to bed with an empty stomach, while she lied to their children about why there was no money for new shoes, Obi had been here, pretending to be rich, spraying money like it meant nothing. Amara took out her phone and began taking photos. The building, the sign, the money changer, everything. She documented the time, the location, the evidence of Obi's double life. Then she turned and walked home through the dark streets, her mind racing with plans. She knew what she had to do. She had finally seen enough. When Obi came home late that night, stumbling slightly, smelling of alcohol and perfume, he found Amara sitting at the kitchen table. The lights were on. Papers were spread across the surface. bank statements, photos, evidence. His face went pale. Amara, what is this? Sit down, she said, her voice calm but cold like ice. Obi hesitated, then slowly lowered himself into the chair across from her. His eyes darted from the papers to her face, searching for an escape, finding none. I know everything, Amara said quietly. Sporty bet, the strip clubs, the money changer, the lies. All of it. Obi opened his mouth, then closed it. What could he say? The evidence was right there, undeniable. How long? Amara asked. How long have you been gambling away our children's future? It's not what you think, he began, but she cut him off. Don't lie to me anymore. I'm tired of lies. I followed you. I saw you with my own eyes. While I've been struggling to feed our family, you've been throwing money away like it's nothing. Obi's shoulders slumped. I can explain. I thought I could win. I thought I could make more money for us. By gambling? By going to strip clubs? Amara's voice rose, anger finally breaking through her calm exterior. Do you know how much you've stolen from us? From your own children? Obi looked down at his hands, unable to meet her eyes. I'm sorry. The words, I'm sorry, hung in the air, hollow and insufficient. Amara stared at her husband, this man she thought she knew, and saw a stranger sitting across from her. Sorry doesn't pay the rent, she said, her voice shaking. Sorry doesn't feed our children. Sorry doesn't undo the damage you've done. Obi's face contorted with desperation. Give me one more chance. I have a plan. There's one last bet I can make, a sure thing. If I win, I can pay back everything. I can fix this. Amara couldn't believe what she was hearing. Even now, after being caught, after everything, he was still talking about gambling. One last bet? She repeated, her voice rising in disbelief. Do you hear yourself? You're addicted, Obi. This isn't about winning money. This is about you destroying our family. You don't understand. Obi stood up, his hands shaking. I've studied this match. I know the teams. This one will definitely win. Just give me one more chance. Before Amara could respond, Obi grabbed the car keys from the table. She realized with horror that he had already made up his mind. He wasn't asking for permission. He was announcing his decision. Where are you going? She demanded. To fix this. To win back what I've lost. Obi, if you walk out that door. But he was already gone, leaving Amara standing in the kitchen, her ultimatum unfinished. She heard the car engine start, heard him drive away into the night. At the betting shop, Obi approached the counter with the last of their money, savings Amara didn't even know existed because he had hidden them away for exactly this moment. His hands trembled as he filled out the betting slip. This was it. Everything on one bet. All or nothing. Redemption or ruin. The other men at the shop watched him with a mixture of concern and fascination. They had all seen this before, the desperate final bet, the moment when a man gambles everything on a dream. My brother, are you sure? Emeka asked, his voice gentle. This is too much money. Think about your family. But Obi's eyes were wild, unfocused. This is for my family. When I win, everything will be okay. You'll see. He placed the bet and sat down to watch the mat. The shop fell silent around him. Everyone knew this was different, that something important was happening, that a man's entire life was balanced on the outcome of a football game. The match began. Obi's team took an early lead, and hope surged through him. This was it. His luck was finally changing. The universe was finally rewarding his faith. But football is a cruel game. In the second half, the opposing team scored. Then scored again. Obi's team fought back but couldn't break through. The minutes ticked down. Stoppage time came and went. The final whistle blew. Obi had lost. Everything. Obi sat frozen in his chair, unable to move, unable to process what had just happened. Around him, the betting shop continued its normal operations. Other men placed bets, collected winnings, cursed their losses. Life went on. But for Obi, time had stopped. The betting slip in his hand, now worthless, represented more than just money. It represented his marriage, his family, his future, all gambled away and lost. His phone began to ring. Creditors calling, friends demanding their loans back. He had borrowed from everyone, promised everyone, lied to everyone, and now there was nothing left to give. Word spread quickly through Akoba. In a small town, secrets don't stay hidden for long. Neighbors who had once respected Obi now whispered about him with pity and judgment. Did you hear about Amara's husband? Gambling away everything while his family starves. I heard he goes to strip clubs, spraying money like a big man while his children wear torn uniforms. That poor woman. She works so hard, and he throws it all away. The shame was crushing, but worse than the public humiliation was the realization of what he had done to his family. Images flashed through his mind. Chitty asking for school supplies, Ngozi's worn shoes, Amara's tired face. When Obi finally drove home that night, the house was silent. Too silent. Amara had packed 2 small bags, one for each child. She had moved quietly through the house, taking only what they needed, leaving behind everything that reminded her of broken promises and wasted years. When Obi opened the door, he found the house dim and empty. No cooking smells from the kitchen. No children's laughter. No sound of Amara's sewing machine humming in the corner. On the table, she had left a note. I gave you everything. You chose gambling over us. The children and I are leaving. Don't look for us. We deserve better than this. Obi collapsed into a chair, the note trembling in his hands. He wanted to scream, to cry, to beg for another chance. But there was no one left to hear him. His wife was gone. His children were gone. His money was gone. Everything he had loved and taken for granted had vanished. The title of this story echoes through the empty house. If only she knew what her husband spends his money on. But now she knew. And knowing had set her free. As dawn broke over Akoba, Amara sat in a small rented room with Chitty and Ngozi sleeping peacefully beside her. For the first time in months, she felt a strange sense of peace. The road ahead would be difficult, but at least it would be honest. At least she wouldn't be financing a fantasy anymore. The story ends not with redemption, but with consequence. Money wasn't the real issue. Deception, addiction, and the slow erosion of trust, these were the true thieves. And by the time the truth was revealed, there was nothing left to save. If only she had known sooner, perhaps things would have been different. But perhaps knowing exactly when she did was exactly when she needed to. Some marriages end not with a bang, but with the quiet click of a door closing one final time.